would like to welcome Nirvana, who will be co-presenting the paper called the Tara District. Raise your hand. Who's also here with us today. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Golan. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge Tara, my co-author, and for her guidance and assistance in producing this research paper. I originally crafted this research as a master's student at the University of Waterloo. Since then, I've moved on to get into economic development consulting with Miller Dickinson Blade. So I'd like to acknowledge Miller Dickinson Blade for letting me be here today, as well as thanking the Monieson Centre and Yolande for inviting me to speak. So this research paper looks at the changing dynamics of the rural economy, and I bring to you a case study from southwestern Ontario, Essex County. I'll just give you a quick rundown of the structure of my discussion today. A quick introduction to the research and the context of the study area. Spend a little bit more time in the second half discussing the research results, 4 pathways as I identified to the creative rural economy, as well as the significant challenges and barriers that the region is encountering that I've identified through the research, and a very quick discussion of conclusions. So to begin with, the literature suggests that rural regions face significant economic development challenges. Some of these challenges include population decline, rapidly aging infrastructure, declining provision of basic services, youth out-migration, and even in some cases isolation from other communities and large urban centers. Such challenges have become even more pronounced because of the economy, the recent economic crisis, and specifically many urban, or rural rather, areas in Ontario have experienced sharp increases in unemployment due to manufacturing plant downsizing, layoffs, and closures, which directly affects livelihoods and quality of life in these rural communities and small towns. As a means of combating this type of decline, many rural regions have looked to alternative methods of economic development based on their existing assets and amenities. An increasingly popular path to economic development is found in the ideas presented by scholars who argue that creativity and innovation are key drivers to regional economies. And despite the significant urban foundations of this literature, there is an increasing amount of rurally focused scholarly literature. So this research is asking, is there evidence of a transition towards a creative economy in rural regions? What are the potential pathways to a prosperous creative rural economy? And what are the barriers and challenges associated with such a transition to a creative economy? My primary method of inquiry were key informant interviews in the region in Essex County. Looked at some Statistics Canada data to get a better idea of the region's dynamics, media reports, and some local and regional documents. So some context on the county. Essex is located in the southernmost tip of Ontario, adjacent to the city of Windsor and the Detroit border crossing. There are 7 municipalities within this small county, and it's heavily manufacturing focused. 24% of employment in the county is focused in manufacturing, and this is a higher percentage than the province of Ontario, as well as agriculture is a significant industry. In regards to education attainment, it's relatively weak compared to the city of Windsor. However, there's a smaller increase, or larger amount rather, of apprenticeships, trades, and non-university diplomas. So in a place where manufacturing, technical, and engineering occupations are primary, this is a significant form of education and training. In regards to immigration, the town of Leamington within Essex County has the highest share of immigrants, and this can be attributed to the agricultural activity in the region. A number of migrant workers from Mexico and the Caribbean enter the region and the community seasonally through the Canadian Agricultural Seasonal Workers Program. And this leads to both social and economic impacts on the rural community, in which I'll discuss further in the research results section. Now moving into the pathways that I've identified through the research, the first of which is art, culture, and heritage as economic development. Art, culture, and heritage are becoming recognizable economic development strategies in rural regions. In regards to Essex County, a key informant in the interview sessions provided consensus, actually many of them provided consensus, that the region possesses appropriate cultural and natural amenities that could act as an anchor for creative talent. However, in this region, cultural infrastructure is an issue. This quote here is speaking specifically to performing arts and the lack of a performing arts centre posing struggles for this type of occupation to flourish in the region. The region's also leveraging their authenticity for tourism initiatives. And recently, through identifying that they have a significant amount of art, culture, and heritage to leverage, they've undertaken a cultural mapping exercise in this year, identifying 2,593 cultural assets. The second pathway that I've identified is creativity in the food economy. Evidence of interest in local and organic food in the county is increasing, and this is supported by initiatives such as a buy local map. One key informant states here that we have this local food thing that people have been living for 100 years, so for them this is not a new idea. The folks in the county have been living this culinary idea for quite some time. As the quote goes on to say, it's maybe not gastronomy, but it's certainly about food in and of the area. A second part of creativity in the food economy is the growing wine industry. This industry requires a very skilled set, which key informants have identified. Skills such as science, hospitality, and management are necessary to grow and flourish in this industry. Another interesting trend was cross-sectoral entrepreneurship. A number of winery owners were previously involved in manufacturing and engineering occupations. However, with the challenges that manufacturing has presented in recent times, this key informant that I've quoted here has justified their shift into an entrepreneurial venture in the wine industry. For us, it was getting out of what was going to be a very difficult future in the automotive world. Now I wouldn't want to be in that business for any amount of money. This is a trend not only with one or two entrepreneurs, but a number that I've identified. However, growing the wine industry has encountered a number of challenges, of which are the regulatory environment, meaning planning controls and zoning bylaws, which don't allow a lot of agricultural lands to include recreational or agritourism, which some municipalities have been working towards amending, as well as the LCBO, which poses challenges to smaller winemakers who cannot get their products onto the shelves and are dependent on attracting tourists and visitors to the region to sell their product. The third area or pathway in which I identified in the research is innovation in agriculture and greenhouse production specifically. A number of key informants identified that the concentration of firms in the region is starting to cluster, and entrepreneurs are being attracted to this concentration of greenhouses. Integral to this growing cluster is the Greenhouse Processing Crops Research Centre located in Harrow in the town of Essex. This research centre is it's the largest in North America, and it is part of a national network of 19 research centres. And there's a significant amount of interface between the research station and the growers, which is integral to the innovation process. Other key points from the greenhouse production industry is knowledge sharing and exchange. There's evidence of this that growers have identified. This quote here that I have is the Ontario Growers Study Groups. They get together once a week, taking turns to critique each other's greenhouses, learn from each other, so the local growers very much work together. Similar to the wine industry, there's evidence of entrepreneurs moving from manufacturing into greenhouses. A key informant describes their movement into the greenhouse sector, stating that I got into the automotive sector actually doing work for Tier 1 suppliers, and that was very cyclical. I saw the greenhouse industry going on around me, and I was asked by somebody expanding their greenhouse to install their heating systems. I took that contract and was fairly quickly asked to do 2, then 3, 4 more, so I got away from the automotive industry. Some challenges to expanding this industry is intellectual property, whereby many multinationals hold patents for seeds, and this is a hindrance not only to innovation but to growers who are trying to access different types of crops to sell, as well as energy consumption. The greenhouse industry is highly dependent on fuels and are quickly looking into renewables as alternatives for the environment as well as their bottom line. The fourth area is renewable energy. 3 areas have been identified in the county: biomass, wind, and solar farms. Key informant has identified that a number of municipalities are looking to renewable energy as a means for economic development and an alternative to the manufacturing sector. As well, though, they are looking to localize manufacturing in renewable energy to diversify the existing base that they have. This, in turn, leads to the opportunity for job creation, and employment in this sector will require skills. St. Clair College in the city of Windsor offers a 3-year advanced diploma in energy systems design and technology, which feeds into this growing industry. However, there's been some community dissent around this initiative, discerned from newspaper articles in the Windsor Star as well as key informants. This quote here says, "People leave cities for rural areas to put tall buildings and bustle behind them. Many aren't going to be happy living in the shadows of 120-meter high turbines with blades that turn constantly." Despite this community dissent, though, there is a significant amount of government